I'm Dina Davidson. Before we hit play, there were some very awkward conversations, so I'm glad that we cut that out of the podcast. But in the studio today, we have Kevin Thompson. Woo!
Yay.
Give it up.
Yeah.
I
We did
like
not
that.
sound excited at all. Yay.
That was the weirdest reaction I have ever heard on the podcast. I don't know what that means, Kevin. But okay, so you are the married life pastor at Bayside.
I am.
And before you came to Bayside, you were pastor at a church in Arkansas for 19 years, lead pastor for 7 years?
13 or 13. Yeah,
I am really bad at math. You told me that before, and I was like, okay, I'll definitely remember that. Wrong. False. Married to Jenny. I actually have never met Jenny, but everything you've ever told me about Jenny has made me fall in love with her.
No,
So-
well, I have two. And
Yeah,
so
you do.
that's a positive thing.
And then you have 2 kiddos.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Ella and Silas.
Ella and
Ella's
Silas.
17, Silas 14.
I shouldn't call them kiddos. They're almost adults.
They are.
They are kiddos.
Teenagers.
Love it. Okay, so I love it because actually that also you are the author of numerous books. Give me one of them, and then the
Countless.
forthcoming.
A
Countless.
few. Yeah, so Friends,
Probably
Partners,
count
and
them,
Lovers.
actually.
Friends, Partners, and Lovers is the main marriage book that I'm probably most known for. And then, I have another book called Stay in Your Lane that's about to come out.
Okay.
Love it. Okay, so speaking of your 2 kiddos, we wanted to have a conversation with you about how to have healthy relationships with parents. So before we do that, on the Thrive College podcast, we always pass the mic to the students so they can ask their questions. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then we'll frame our questions. So kicking it off with Leans.
Hello.
Your eyes went so wide. You're like, what?
Hello. My name is Leans. What do I say about myself? Let's
Yeah.
think. So my name is Leans, and I am an intern for middle school ministry.
There you go.
you
You can
go.
say anything about yourself. What do you want to tell us about yourself?
That's it.
That's it.
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all. She's only comfortable divulging so much information,
Right.
and that's the amount of information
Right.
she's
Wow.
comfortable with.
Well, I'm Ty. I am a intern for Granite Bay for worship, and I'm excited to be here.
Love it. Very cool. So, Ty, do you want to kick it off and asking Kevin this question about how we can have healthy relationships with our parents?
Yeah, totally. I'm just so curious because for me personally, I don't get to see my parents too often, just with like ministry, internship, school, etc. So how would you go about, or any advice on balancing all that and just like having healthy relationships with our parents?
I think it begins with an understanding that it's going to be tense, it's going to be difficult, because what's happening, I always describe it as a almost ripping away that happens as students become young adults, and you're really in this in-between state of you take on more responsibility than you've ever had in your entire life, and yet your parents are probably not wanting to give you full responsibility yet. And you probably don't even want full responsibility yet, most students, because they would still like to be on their parents' insurance, maybe have their parents
Of course.
pay for their cell phone bills and things like that. So you live in this great in-between. And anytime we're in between, there's a lack of clarity, and that lack of clarity can often lead to tension.
Yeah.
And so I think with both parents and students to recognize, hey, we've never done this before. So our parents have never parented us at this age before. We've never been this age before.
Right.
It's going to be difficult. We're going to make mistakes. And so there are going to be times in which they're going to view me like I used to be, not who I am now.
Yeah.
There are going to be other times in which I'm going to view myself like I'm going to be, not like what I am right now. And so to recognize that that's the case. And as long as we begin to frame it within that concept of, hey, we're going to mess this up regularly, but that's okay. Let's learn and grow and move forward. Then I think there's an opportunity to have a good relationship. I think where trouble comes is this. I always think, so let's tag it into the next book, right?
Okay.
So
Stay in your lane.
I've written this book called Stay in Your Lane, and the concept is basically this, that if you can answer 3 questions, it will show you clarity on how to take your next step, whatever it is. And the 3 questions are this: what's mine, what's theirs, and what's God's? So what's mine? What is it that I actually own, that I'm responsible for? This now goes in my category. What's theirs? What belongs to them? What do they have a right to make decisions about? And then ultimately, what's God? There are things that are beyond our control, that are just simply God's stuff.
Yeah.
The amazing thing to me about this, Ty, is whenever I go to the Sacramento airport, I can go as fast as basically I want to go through 6 lanes of traffic, and generally speaking, everybody gets there totally safe.
Yeah.
what allows that to happen? It is literally these white painted dotted lines on the interstate that clarifies the difference between what is my lane and what is your lane. And as long as we abide by those boundaries, we can move at a very high rate of speed at a very close connection. But the moment we confuse that, my neighborhood, they repaved the road, but they didn't paint the lines back immediately, and it was chaos.
Yeah.
We're going 20 miles an hour, and we're having trouble. Whereas on the way to the airport, you can go down one I-80 at 80 miles an hour,
Yeah.
and it's not a problem. I think whenever we fail to paint these lines in our lives, struggles come up. And the truth of the matter is, whenever it comes to parenting, so I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old. I see this every day. There are things, when kids are first born, I control everything. Everything's in the what's mine category.
Totally.
But literally every day that goes by, I am taking things out of the what's mine category and putting it into the what's theirs category.
Yeah.
Whenever I recognize that, see that, our relationship tends to go pretty smoothly. But whenever I try to hold on to something that's actually theirs, or whenever they try to take hold of something that they're not ready for yet, that's when tension begins to arise. So my encouragement to you, to your parents, would be to simply ask those questions. What's mine? What's theirs?
Yeah.
What's God's?
Totally.
And I think that can lead to a healthy relationship.
Yeah, totally. I think that's great. What would you say to, because I know there's I have friends who are Christian, but their parents aren't believers. And I know that's a whole different kind of situation. What would you say to them, to those where maybe their parents don't understand, they're chasing after ministry or blah, 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 you know what I mean? So what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think to have a deep respect for their parents, to recognize that actually the with the love and respect that I'm going to treat you is probably going to be one of my greatest testimonies regarding making Jesus known to you.
Yeah.
While having no apologies for this idea that I control my life, I'm going to make my decisions, and here's how I'm going to go about it, and sort of balance those two things. So I'm going to own what I own, and I'm going to make the decision that where I feel God has called me to go. But at the same time, I'm leaning in, I'm being respectful. I'm maybe giving you a love that you're not giving me, or a respect that you're not giving me. Now, that does not mean if parents are abusive or something like that we just, I'm not saying bend to any of
course,
that, but within reason, to allow my love for Jesus to cause a greater amount of respect for my parents.
Yeah, that's good.
Should be the byproduct of our faith.
Totally.
Wow.
Yeah, that's so good.
So let's say things are going south and maybe there just hasn't been any handoff from a parent to the kid of hey, this is the stuff that's no longer in my lane. It's now in your lane. They're just trying to keep all the things in their lane. I mean, should they just go up to their parents and be like, hey, stay in your lane?
Yeah.
I don't imagine that's
Here's
how.
a book.
Yeah.
Why don't you read
read
it,
it.
Dad?
Yeah.
No.
How do you have that conversation? That's awkward.
Well, I do think that there are some conversations that can happen, and you have to be prepared in that moment. I always think from a parenting perspective that we have to wed together responsibilities and privileges. And so whenever my kids want a new privilege, they feel like, all right, my son's about to have a birthday. I've had a new birthday. I'm older now. I should get more privileges. Great. What are the new responsibilities you're going to pick up? Because those two things are always wedded together. And so I think to approach in a very respectful way, to approach parents and to ask, is there anything at my age that I should be doing that you feel that I'm not from a responsibility standpoint? Yeah. And to come in with open arms and hands regarding that, to receive what they say. And what that does is begins to assist them to show that's a question that a 20-year-old asked that a 15-year-old does not ask.
Totally.
My son tonight, whenever I get home, is not going to say, hey, Dad, are there any new responsibilities that I should be taking on at this point in my life? No, that's a question of an adult.
Not until he listens to this podcast.
No, that's exactly right.
He's gonna be
That changes everything because he listens every time. And but to lead with that conversation, and then maybe you begin to take it up. Hey, there are some things I feel like that you're not letting me make the decision on yet. You've loved me. I understand that. Help me understand why you think I'm not ready to make that decision yet. Yeah. And then how can I maybe help you understand that I think I am? And then you begin to work out what that actually looks like. But to approach it in that way, instead of coming in and demanding, you have to treat me this way.
Totally.
Wow. I think that will go so much better. And even, I think this kind of actually leads into a conversation about best ways to stay in touch with parents. Talk to us from the parent perspective of what it's like to not be to be so concerned about your kids in every way, like your heart living outside of your body, but not having any details from them. Because I think that's a huge thing that I see with a lot of college students is parents have these crazy worries about what their kids are and are not doing, and zero communication from the students. So what are some ways we can stay in healthy communication with parents?
No, I think that's a great question. And I think to create a discipline within your own life of here's how I'm going to communicate, when I'm going to communicate, and how often. For the first time in a very long time in my life now, I live 1,500 miles away from my parents, and so I've created these rhythms of when I call them. They don't call me very much out of respect for the busyness and all that. Doesn't mean they can't. They track me. That's an interesting thing. They'll bring it up on occasion. And it's just a reminder of exactly what Dina was just saying. Is that part of the relationship never changes. And so I try to be very disciplined in making sure a couple times a week I call both of them and keep a general routine of when that's going to be, so they know the next conversation is going to occur. I think this too, this is a sign of maturity. Whenever you start contacting the parent more than the parent is contacting you, that's a sign that you're growing up. And so if you want to be an adult, if you want to have these kind of things, this is a responsibility you need to take on now in that moment. That's what it means, I think, to honor your father and mother. That is a command that doesn't go away based on age. As a matter of fact, there might be more accountability to it based on age. And so I would create those types of rhythms to understand that your parents are always looking for positive communication from you. And so never downplay the importance of a text, the forwarding of a joke, of an article, just any way to communicate, I'm thinking about you, will go a long way.
That's so good. Leans, any questions?
I would say for you, because you said that you not schedule out. I don't remember if you said you schedule out, but you have times throughout the week where you call your parents. Do you sit or not sit down with them, but just kind of communicate with them of hey, this is when I'm going to call you to talk to you to make time for you? Or is it just whenever you're free, basically?
Yeah, no, it's just become a routine within my own life. Okay. And obviously through trial and error, we've kind of found some basic times that work and then other times that don't. So something like with my dad, we will often text during ball games that I know he's watching, he knows that I'm watching. That's a connection point that we don't have to build in to our lives. But then I have a 20-minute drive to work and home every day. They know that. There's a time change difference that is there. That's a great opportunity to call them. It's also a set time. 20 minutes. Yeah. We know how long the conversation is going to be, how long it can be. And so I think to carve out within your schedule, I mean, literally, you can sit down, your week. This idea that I'm too busy, is such a lie, because the reality is this. If you had a boyfriend or girlfriend, you would find a way to communicate with them. Come on, Kevin. We all have time. We will make time for that which is important. And so we can make time here. The problem is it takes a little bit of intention to actually carry it out, but it's intention that will be well worth it, because here's in part what we're doing. We are creating the culture of our future family by the culture that we create in our current family. Wow. And so if you want to have good communication in the future with your spouse, with your children, all those things, learn to do that now with your parents, and I can almost guarantee you it will carry on in the family you create.
Yeah, that's good.
If you didn't already have the motivation to form a healthy relationship with your parents in college, there it is, right? You're forming your future family by the way you're living within your current family. So good. Any other questions before we ask our last question?
No.
Okay. All right, Kevin, you are our married life pastor. You have seen so many marriages thrive. You've seen so many marriages go off the rails. You have been a pastor in ministry for so many years. You've seen people thrive. You've seen people burn out. And so you come with a wealth of wisdom. So I'm really excited. Whatever direction you want to answer this, it's just yours. You have the mic. What is the one thing that you would say to a young Christian leader?
I think the one thing I would say to a young Christian leader is spend the rest of your life allowing God to transform your heart. So in my opinion, leadership is the influence of others through the transformation of self. And whenever I say transformation of self, I don't mean I'm transforming me. I mean, it's God's transforming me. So I'm a preacher. First and foremost, before anything, I'm a preacher. And what's the old line about preaching? Preaching is truth poured through personality. So it is God's truth now poured through this very feeble frame of mind of who I am, and then expended out to everybody else. From a leadership perspective, what I control the absolute most is me. And literally, the only thing I can do is be me and allow God to pour his love through me to impact everybody else. And so I think from a leadership perspective, we can get really caught up on, I have to build the right resume, I have to be the strong leader, I have to impact all these other people, and all those are important, but they are all byproducts of what is going on. If God is not transforming my heart to make me more like him, the last thing I need is leadership. Actually, I'll do more damage than good. And so if you will now make it your life's calling and mission to understand how loved you are, to understand how God wants to work through you and in you, how he wants to transform your heart and who you are. And I think that's what Paul means whenever he says, follow me as I follow Christ. That's literally the only thing I can say is the only way I can ever tell you to follow me is because I know I'm broken and I'm following Jesus. And so make that your life's pursuit, and then I think everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I know that some people listening will have their entire relationship with their current family as well as their future families transformed from this conversation. So thank you for investing into us.
Thank you all.
Thank you for joining us today on the Thrive College podcast. We hope that today's episode has empowered you to navigate the challenges and the opportunities of your future and your faith. If you really enjoyed our conversation today and appreciated what we had to offer, we would love for you to write a 5-star written review and share it with your friends. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.